can get this going. All right. Thanks everybody for showing up today. My name is Brendan Lowry. I'm a professor here at Tomball. I teach biology and environmental science. That's right. All right. I was informed, and I suppose it's kind of a public service announcement, that the Twinkies you ate were infected, so we apologize for that. Blame Cruz. He told me. Okay. Yes, sir. Well, surprisingly, depends on your zombie. So we'll talk about that. Maybe not. Like I said, thanks for coming out today. By no means am I an expert in the field. I think anybody that's just interested in zombie realizes there really isn't such thing as necessarily a zombie expert, because we haven't actually had one just yet. Although the guy in Miami came very close to eating that other dude's face off. That one's bath salts or whatever he was on. Who knows? So by no means am I an expert in this. However, I do enjoy zombie films and kind of the mythology. And I really like looking at the biological concepts behind what a zombie is. In terms of preparedness, I've been here for quite some time in the area. I was here when Katrina came through. I was here when Rita came through. And I've been here, of course, when Ike came through. And during those time periods, that gave me kind of a unique time to go and look and see how it is that we reacted in kind of these times of crisis, how some people did very well, where other ones not so much. So if we can take some of those concepts and ideas and apply them to our daily life, I think that's going to be the best way to kind of prepare ourselves. Okay? So I guess let's go ahead and get into this. Surviving the zombie apocalypse. And one of the first questions that most of you are probably asking is, what is a zombie? And as I was just discussing, it really depends on the person as to how you feel a zombie should be. There are many, many different types of zombies. We've got the Walking Dead zombies, Romero zombies, the 28 Days Later Rage virus zombies, the sexy zombies, the funny gnome zombies, and of course, Rob Zombie. Or the Rob Zombie. So there are so many different types of zombies, it's really difficult to try to pile that into one concept and say, well, how do you survive these zombies? Each one of these are completely different than one another. Just a little bit of history of zombies. Zombies have actually been around for a long, long period of time, but they just weren't called zombies. If you look at this little map that I've tossed up here, these are just kind of some areas of cultures that have zombies kind of in their history. And if you go back far enough, really what you find out is that zombie really is referring to a bad death. And in a lot of these cultures, it's that spirit that comes back to haunt you from the grave. So for example, in China, that's kind of one of those things where a person dies, they have a bad death, and they come back. So if you kind of follow that along, now you're dealing with The Ring 2, and all those other films in terms of some of that cinema. Okay? Where we've really learned the most from our zombies is kind of cinema. So sometimes we see viruses being that agent that causes zombies. Well, there's tons of other things. You've got viruses. You've got prions, which is like mad cow disease. It even goes so far as to nanobots being the cause for the zombie apocalypse. Well, what is it? If we look at Romero zombie, right, we're looking at the dead are coming back from the grave. There's radiation and nuclear. Anything you can think of, there's a film based on it of a zombie coming back from the dead. So if we kind of look at our culture, all that we've learned essentially from zombies has been from cinema. And even that character has evolved as cinema has evolved. So what we've kind of learned back in the 1940s, I walked with a zombie. Well, it's not the same zombie that we think of kind of today. We can go through here, and we've got Night of the Living Dead, which, that's one of my favorite zombie films, all the way up to the 2000s where we're dealing with Land of the Dead and, of course, Zombieland. So there's really so many different types of zombies, you can't just say one size fits all. So today we're just going to talk about some basic concepts, and then I'm just going to open it up at the end for discussion, and we'll try to hash out some of these different concepts and ideas. Okay. I'm going to add an extra zombie to this. This is my personal zombie. This is what I call the not dead, undead. How many of you guys have actually seen the film Contagion? Okay. Contagion is probably one of the closest to reality that you can watch in terms of film as to how disease actually travels. If you look at pandemics around the world, swine flu, you look at smallpox, you look at Spanish flu, it can travel very quickly. If we really wanted to talk about a true zombie, we would really want to look at something that was viral, that acted very similar to a zombie. So this is what I call kind of the real zombie. And if that were to occur, it really would be don't talk to anyone, don't touch anyone. Basically, just go home, close the doors, and hope for the best. Because if this virus were to transfer around like the flu, we'd all have it very, very easily. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through that. And this picture always creeped me out anyway in this film. Okay, so if we take into account this not dead, undead, we're not necessarily talking about somebody that died and they came back to life. We're actually talking about a person that just gets infected and slowly progresses and gets sick. The closest virus that we have today that does this, that most closely mimics a zombie, is the rabies virus. The rabies virus starts affecting your neurons and will start affecting your brain. And one of the crazy outcomes of this, you can see in this top right picture, hydrophobia. Scared of water. They won't drink water because they can't. They're afraid of drowning. So when you start adding these symptoms of being scared, what do we do as a human when we're scared? Freak out. We can start fighting back. We can start hallucinating. All of these things could potentially lead to this. Okay, so if we're going to look at a real-world scenario, we're going to be looking at a virus that acts very similar to rabies. Another interesting thing about this just came out in the news about 2 weeks ago. A new virus that they've discovered is in the same family as rabies. However, it acts like Ebola, which is very, very nasty stuff. So if you're looking for the closest realism to what we can potentially find a zombie, it's more than likely going to come from the rabies virus. Once you contract rabies virus, it's pretty much fatal in humans right now. However, if we kind of take a spin on this and we say, well, let's say it lasts a little bit longer and it potentially changes our brain chemistry, which is not unusual. Just to give you an example, there's a parasite that scientists are looking at right now that is correlated to higher suicide in people whenever they're infected with it. So it's not really all that far beyond belief to think, wow, there really could be something that's similar to a zombie. So as we go through this, I'm not just going to stick with my personal not dead, undead hypothesis zombie. We are going to look at kind of both zombies. In all these cases, the biggest thing is safety in terms of keeping your mouth closed and all this stuff. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So as we go through it, we'll talk about Hollywood zombies, and then we'll talk about maybe a real zombie. Okay? So the first thing I always like to talk about in terms of how do we survive? Because the first thing we always think of is, let's get all of our ammo. Well, there is going to be a government response to this. I wouldn't necessarily rely on it, but there will be a response. So, how long until a response from the federal government, do you think? For any emergency? Any guesses? 72 hours. Very good. If you look at a lot of the documentation out there, under any natural disaster or biological pandemic, they basically say 72 hours. Don't expect any help until 72 hours. Can they be there sooner? Absolutely. And that's happened before. With technology today, government can respond very, very quickly, but it's basically you're on your own for 3 days, and then help will arrive, but that doesn't mean they'll be there in that many numbers. And most of us have probably seen this firsthand whenever Ike came through or some of the other hurricanes, that you might not have gotten any relief until 2 or 3 days later. Yes, sir?
Is that a military response?
That's FEMA. That's just federal. The first thing really that's going to happen under any circumstance, if you have some type of pandemic, if you have a zombie outbreak, it first rolls to your local government. Your first responders are going to be the ones that come out there. Your local police, your ambulance. Controlling that, if you're having a zombie outbreak, good luck with that one. The next step is the state, and then you'll eventually move to the federal government. So What this means is if you want to be prepared, you don't need to rely on anybody else. So don't be like, oh, if it outbreaks, that's fine. I'm just going to sit home and watch it on the TV. You may not make it. You may be a zombie in 72 hours, right? So if you kind of read this, and this was just from a recent article discussing that, the plan refers to the initial 72-hour period of self-sufficiency. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about in this. What's going to happen once this outbreak begins? And most of us have seen a lot of zombie films and kind of say, okay, well, whenever we start watching these zombie films, a lot of it takes place after the fact that everything's gone to hell, and now everybody's running loose, just shooting everything up, right? Something happened before that. We just didn't really get to see that. One of the things that is going to happen is basically a quarantine. Again, if you watch the film Contagion, that's one of the first things that the government is going to try to do, whether it's state or local, is try to quarantine an area. That can be good or that can be bad, depending on if you're in that quarantine area. Whoops. If your neighbors are the zombies, well, you're not going anywhere because you're probably going to get quarantined along with them. So I hope you guys weren't all that close. The transmission, this is where I kind of come back to how is it that we get zombies? You know, if we look at a lot of our culture and kind of our TVs and stuff, how do you become a zombie? You get bitten. Okay? What else is there? We talked about 28 days later. Contagious blood. Okay? You can maybe drink something. Right? So there's all these different ways of transmission of a potential virus or maybe just getting bit. Okay? So again, we're kind of talking about two different things here. We're talking about kind of what we know in the Hollywood zombie in terms of, okay, you've got to get bit, you've got to get scratched, you have to drink it, okay, you have to come in contact. What if it's not like that? What if it is like the flu virus? It's airborne. Now we're in some serious trouble. If I have the flu, I may not be symptomatic for 24 hours. I can still pass that flu on without me even knowing I have it. So we could all be zombies in here right now. We just don't know it yet until 24 hours later when we start saying, I'm kind of hungry. Okay. Just looking at some basic pandemic stuff from FEMA, it's actually really good for any type of transmissible diseases, particularly saying like flu or any, say, zombie virus. You can just read over those. Avoid close contact with people that are sick. You know, whenever you look at a lot of the zombie films, it is you've got to be bitten or you've got to be, clawed or something. And, that's interesting and all, but my favorite is from 28 Days Later, he happens to look up and a drop of blood drops into his eye and he becomes a zombie. So if you're watching Walking Dead and everybody's running up, hacking heads, you see how bloody they get? Guess how disease gets passed along? Through blood. So I don't mean to burst your Walking Dead bubble, but there's a little inconsistency there, but it's a great show. I love it. So I'm not gonna bash them. Okay. So when you're dealing with any of this, when you're watching people just running through, just hacking and shooting, and that's not realistic at all. Okay. It's not feasible. It's not realistic because if you do that, you're going to get blood spatter all over you. However, there are a few where people are in riot gear and they do just fine because you're not getting infected. Okay? So for any of these outbreaks, you definitely need to stay clean, and don't shake anybody's hand or anything like that. You don't want to become a zombie. Biting as a means of transmission, as fun as that is and gory, it's probably the worst way for disease to be carried around. How easy would it be to quarantine, let's say, Tomball College, if all of a sudden there was an outbreak and people were just starting to bite people? It'd be pretty easy to quarantine it. Just lock the doors and then put troops around us or, it's not going to get out of that. So in order for this outbreak to really occur, it's got to be more than that. It's got to be something that's fast and that travels very quickly, something that's more than likely airborne. Although, if you are bitten, sometimes if you watch kind of the zombie lore, it takes just a few minutes. Other times, it might take a day or two, and you're actually kind of useful for that. But you're the first guy at the front of the line, so if you died, oh well, you were going to be a zombie anyway. Okay, so here's some survival options. Let's talk about that because that's kind of the meat of this, right? We want to know how do we survive a zombie apocalypse, and all of us probably have really great ideas. okay? How many of you said, okay, if there's an outbreak, the first thing I'm doing is running to Walmart? You're all dead. I actually did a survey here on campus a while back, and I said, okay, if there was an outbreak, what do you do? And so many people said, I'm running to Home Depot, I'm running to Lowe's, I'm running to Walmart or Target, and I'm getting all this food and I'm leaving. Guess what, genius? Everybody else has the exact same idea. Who is going to be your worst enemy in the first 24 hours of outbreak? Other humans. Everybody else. Because guess what? Nobody's got resources. Nobody's prepared. Everybody's freaking out. And those of you that were here during Ike, you probably saw a lot of people getting really antsy and really nervous. I was up in Huntsville when Katrina and Rita came through, and people were literally freaking out. They were like, I need water, I need gasoline, I need bread. And you go to the grocery store, and it was just ridiculous. So whenever we talk about how do you survive, there's really kind of two options. And that is either sheltering in or bugging out, which means you either stay, which this is the best zombie place ever, unless there's water around it, so great one, or you leave. You try to get out of there. And again, this is kind of the same thing that we see in a lot of disaster scenarios. Do I stay or do I go? The number one thing you need to do is prepare beforehand. How long should you be prepared for? At least 3 days, because we said 72 hours till you get anybody coming in. They could get here earlier, but let's pretend that they're not. 2 weeks is usually what a lot of people say, and that's kind of the kind of status quo. Is about 2 weeks. But you go to the grocery store and it's like this. Well, I'm getting everything. I don't care if there's bread out of a bag. I'm grabbing that too. But this is how it happens. Everybody starts rushing for food. Most people have about 3 days worth of food in their home. Of course, it may not be food you want to eat. You may have just cans of tuna or sardines that have been sitting there for years, and you're like, I don't want to eat that, but you will. The other thing that's also interesting is when you go to these big box stores, they also have right about 3 days worth of food in order to get. But when people go in and there's a big run on bread and water, it goes very, very quickly because people get more than they need, right? So don't expect to find resources when something happens. You have to have these resources beforehand, okay? Being prepared is what this is about. Okay, the threes of survival, unfortunately, are not Starbucks, cell phones, and beer. Although it's not a bad list to begin with, the actual threes of survival, in an extreme situation, you can live 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, and that's basically referring to like really cold environments, really hot environments, 3 days without water, and then 3 weeks without food. Okay, and that's kind of the basic three. And of course, there's different, if you look at people that were stranded on these islands or they were afloat in their boats, they live longer than that. They can survive a little bit longer without food. But as a general rule of thumb, that's what you're dealing with. Water, water, water. That's the key thing to survival. You got to have it. Okay, so plan, and then be ready to change that plan is what I always say. Because anytime you plan something, it's not always going to go as planned. So you really have to be flexible on this, okay? So whenever you're dealing with something like a zombie outbreak and you're in your home and you're freaking out, things happen. One may come bursting through your door. Now what do you do? Or your neighbors are now infected. What do you do now? Okay, so now there's so many other things that you'd be very, very cautious of. Okay, so according to the Red Cross, there's a couple things to look at here. How much water you should have, how much food you should have, flashlight batteries. You can just kind of look through these things. This is just a basic list for preparation for basically any type of emergency, whatever disaster scenario you're dealing with. Okay, whether it be zombies or whether it be, hurricane or whatnot. I found this online, I really enjoy the house rules in the event of a zombie apocalypse. Gather all essential supplies upstairs and destroy the staircase. That works, because as we know, zombies can't climb. They're terrible at it. We saw a minute ago our zombie apocalypse home. Perfect. It's very difficult for them to climb. That is if they're our Hollywood zombie. If there's somebody like you and me, that doesn't really work anymore, because if they want to get up there, they're going to get up there. Don't be a hero. I see that all the time in the films. I want to go save them. Oh, no, they're gone. Never mind. Fill all available containers with water whilst it is still available. And that one seems like a simple one, like, okay, we'll go fill some containers. And here's something that I've been thinking quite a bit about in terms of if we did have some massive, crazy outbreak of zombies, I'll be damned if I'm going outside. I'm not going anywhere. We have to realize that in case of something like this, what happens to our water supply system? Who's running that? The people are. We are. And if I'm staying home, they're probably staying home, so nobody's now treating the water. And the water pressure is probably going to drop, and it's going to drop in quality. So as soon as something like this happens, what's recommended through a lot of places is fill your tubs with water, drink the water out of the toilet, not the bowl, that's a gross, out of the back of the toilet, okay? Don't use the bowl, please. You'll have worse things than zombies, okay? So you want to get as much water as possible because when you run out of water, that's when things get really, really serious. Black out your windows, keep lights off, and keep quiet. This is not a time to go gung-ho and just start lighting up the area with M16 fire. It's not going to work. You're just going to attract everybody to you. And if you've been watching Walking Dead, they do a pretty good, explaining of you got to be quiet, and then you can take out more zombies one-on-one. One person must be on the lookout at all times. Be prepared to bug out, which we're going to talk about in just 1 second. Do not answer the door. I'm like, of course, I'm not answering the door. Ding dong. Hello? Yeah, no. In any of these scenarios, when you're dealing with, say, a biological agent or anything like that, you don't go to the door. You don't answer it. You're closed off from the world at that point in time. That is really the best scenario that you can hope for. Be sensible with supplies. They're finite. So don't drink all your beer on the first day. Save it. Don't drink all your water on the first day. Don't eat all your Twinkies on the first day. Save one so when you do get attacked, it's the last thing you eat. Okay? That way, you go out with something in your mouth. I like the things to remember. Aim for the head or you're dead. Zombies cannot be reasoned with. Maybe it used to be your aunt, but it's not anymore. I always think that's funny whenever I talk to my friends. I'm like, well, what would you do if I became a zombie? And my best friend's like, I would just shoot you. Thank you. I appreciate your honesty. And I said, you wouldn't even wait to see if I became a zombie? Nope. I'm just going to shoot you. I'm like, okay, fair enough, fair enough. And then I say, well, what if I'm that one person that's immune? That's too bad for you. Shouldn't have got bit. Thanks. Appreciate it, buddy. Okay. So sheltering in. Sheltering in basically means you sit down, you close everything off. You can really only do this if you have your resources available. If you've watched a lot of your zombie films, again, it depends on the type of zombie. Some are very, very smart. They're able to get in. Other ones just kind of walk into the wall and they're not doing anything. They're very, very brain dead. Again, we've got so many different types of zombies. Maybe we can talk about all those towards the end. So there's going to be different levels of zombies in terms of the hierarchy. Are you dealing with a fast zombie? Are you dealing with a slow zombie? Do they have some type of brain cognition? Or are they just basically the Walking Dead, just running into stuff? Okay. The things about sheltering in, there's a couple of really good concepts about this. And a lot of people think, I'm just going to get up, I'm going to go, and I'm hauling it out of here. That may not be the best situation because if you're sheltered in and you already have your resources, that's pretty good because you're not burning any energy. If you're not doing anything, you don't have to eat nearly as much. As much as, when I get bored, that's all I seem to do is just eat and eat and eat and watch TV and play Xbox. Unfortunately, you're in this survival situation. You're not going to be able to do that, but you don't need nearly as much food, so survival time can be extended quite a bit. You're out of sight. That's the number one thing. If a zombie doesn't see you, they're not going to come and get you. So stay quiet, as it said, and stay out of sight. Lock all your doors. Hide your kids. Hide your wife. You know what I mean? Okay? When you shelter in, hopefully you've already got a store of your resources. So again, you can just hang out, relax, as long as nobody's coming in the front door. And mental stability. This is something a lot of people forget. When something crazy like this happens, people lose their frickin' mind. If you're somewhere that you know you're home, guess what? You're going to be way more calm than people that are out running around, always looking behind your back. So this is kind of a big deal, and a lot of people don't think about this in terms of I'm at home, I'm somewhere familiar. I know where my doors are, I know my exits, I know so much about this area. How many of you guys, in the middle of the night, without any light, can navigate your own home without running into anything? Exactly. You already know this area forwards and backwards, okay? So you can defend that way better than the area that you have no clue about. So some tips. Fill your tubs with water, as I said. Just that way you've got tons and tons of water. Don't go take a leisurely bath. You want to drink that water later, okay? Close and secure your doors and windows. One thing I always advise is you don't need interior doors anymore. Take them off, put them on the exterior doors, and nail them up or screw them in or put them over windows. You don't need interior doors anymore. You need to secure any of your outdoor exits, okay? Make your home look looted. Within the first couple of hours, whenever there's no resource at Walmart, where's everybody going to go for resources? Other people's homes. So make yours look like it's already been ransacked, and they'll pass it by. This has been shown to work in some of these scenarios like Katrina and all this stuff where people, if the house looks trashed, they're not going to go in there. It looks like somebody's already been through there. Why waste time on that? So go get your underwear drawer, go toss it out in the front yard, go get all your dirty clothes, just throw them out in the yard. You don't need that stuff anymore anyway. Okay? Remain calm and quiet. It's kind of the last one, of course. Just relax, take it easy. As long as you're quiet, hopefully you should be good. Ah, wrong way. Bugging out. Does this look familiar? Okay. Bugging out is, hey, let's get out of here. And for sometimes that's a really good idea. The problem is a lot of people also have kind of the same idea. This is I-45 going north. You can see Splashtown over there on the right. I was in Huntsville during this time period, and they actually had both sides of 45 going north. So both sides of 45, everybody was just coming north. A friend of mine tried to leave Galveston. It took him 24 hours to get here to Tomball. 24 hours. He almost ran out of gas because of he had to keep turning his truck off and on. So whenever you have a scenario where there's some type of major catastrophe and you've got zombies chomping at the bit, if the quarantine doesn't work, people are going to try to get out of there. Well, guess what? You may not be able to because, one, you're quarantined in. They're not going to let you leave. Well, you might, but it's going to be as a zombie with a bullet in you, right? Bugging out always seems like a good idea, but then it's not. There's a couple problems with bugging out, and this is one of them. Getting in a traffic jam. How many of you can, let's say, get to Dallas without using I-45 and no GPS, just your knowledge, no maps? Just a few of us, right? If we can't get on a major highway, some of us, we have no idea where we're going. So one of the first things you probably need to do today is get a map. Because if you want to avoid this and not be stuck in traffic, you're going to have to go back roads. So some of the good things, though, about bugging out, you can move away from an outbreak. You can get away from the zombies. So that's great. That's one thing you definitely want to do. There's always this question, do I stay or do I go? It's going to be different for everybody. Every one of you is going to have a completely different idea of, do I leave or do I stay? It all depends. You may need to move so you can find more resources, and potentially you can even move to a new area. So whenever you leave, okay, in your bug out situation, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Know where you are going. You need to know where you're going. If you don't, you're just going to walk around in circles. The other thing you have to think about is stay out of sight. If you don't know how to get somewhere other than 45 and you're following 45, I'm sure there's a lot of other people going to be following it with you. You probably don't want to attract attention to yourself. However, there can be a benefit because there are some safety in numbers. Okay, so you can kind of benefit from this. Again, it really depends. And here's something that I hadn't really thought about, but after doing a little bit of research, this was an article I read. Beware of authorities. I'm not talking about the police officers or the ambulance. I'm talking about people that are dressed up that look like authorities. We still kind of have this problem now. This has been on the news probably about a year ago. This guy was pulling females over, and he was dressed like a police officer. Well, it wasn't necessarily a police cruiser, but it looked like a cop to them, so they stopped. This could be something that's very, very detrimental in this type of situation where you want somebody in the authority, hey, can you help me out? Because that's what they do. Well, they may not be who you think they are. So that's kind of this tricky area that, hey, okay, well, I'm going to go up here and see this officer when it's really not. And now you're robbed, and now you have no resources. So that's something else to think about. When you bug out, you need a bob. A bob is a bug out bag. That is something that you take with you when you go. Because you need to carry, you don't know how long you're going to be going. If you're driving out, well, what happens if you do hit a traffic jam? You're not getting there now. Now you've got to walk. You've got to figure out a way to get there. And you can only get there if you have enough resources to survive that long time period. So what do you put in your bob? What do you put in your bag? Okay? You probably will be walking at least 30 miles a day. On average, we walk about 3 miles an hour. If you walk 10 hours a day, you'll hit about the 30-mile mark. So you should always choose places that are about 30 miles out. Those should be your little checkpoints. Now, in your bag, if you're walking 30 miles a day, do you want to carry tons of heavy stuff? No way, Jose. It's going to depend on what you think you need. Of course, you're going to need water. My top 5, water, food, map, first aid, and socks. There is something about putting on a fresh pair of socks that would just make my whole day. That for me is just a comfort item. I always advise one comfort item in there, if you can afford it. Of course, I actually do have a go bag. It's for hurricanes, but my wife has one. And I also have a storage of food in my garage. I'm not going to tell you where I live so that you can't come and get it, okay? But in my bag, it's just full of food. I've got MREs and lots of water, or I've at least got tablets that I can purify water. The number one thing really is your old cabeza here, your head. If you know a lot of stuff, you can find water on the way, and you know how to purify, you know how to clean stuff. So you can really cut down on all the things that you think you might need in order to get away from a zombie. Again, if you're packing 50 pounds, how fast can you run from a zombie? Not very fast, okay? Not only is he going to find lunch with you, but probably a dessert in your bag as well. So don't carry too much. So in your bug-out bag, you don't want it to be too much. During any type of, say, outbreak of any type of zombie, there's a couple of different things that you definitely want to have with you. And the reason I kind of stuck this up there, number one, of course, a 2-week supply of water and food. That's if you're staying in. If you're on the road, again, you probably need at least three days' worth of water. Another thing that a lot of people don't tell you, if you're eating in a survival situation, you need to drink water. Because if you eat without water, you actually dehydrate yourself. Because you have to use water to digest your food down. So water is very important. My advice is only eat when you can drink water. The reason I kind of stick this up here is this one here, prescription drugs. There's a lot of people, if you think about maybe your parents or your grandparents, we're all going to try to at least help, Nana out of the zombies. We don't want her to become a zombie, right? So be sure that you're also getting medications. Nobody's going to help their Nana? You guys looked at me like I was crazy. Nobody's going to help your grandma or nothing like that? Come on. You got to help Nana. No, I'm not. He said he was going to shoot me. I'm not shooting him. He might be the one that's resistant to the zombie virus, and then I might have to shoot him to get his blood to make a vaccine, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, the last one, part 4, self-defense. Stealth is your number one ally. I found this picture online. I thought this was hilarious. These are all people on the right-hand side. See the little dude's shoes over here? That's what I'm going to dress up as. I'm going to go to some factory and dress just like whatever's boxed up there. So all those boxes, that's another person. That's another person like IKEA. They made a little costume out of bags and just basically hid in it. Stealth is going to be your number one self-defense against any zombie. Again, you watch any show, everyone gets into trouble when they make a lot of noise. So if you're using shotguns and M16s, guess what? You're just attracting everybody around. You need something that's quiet, okay? If you happen to be a ninja, then you should win the whole game at this point. You'll never be found. So maybe I should start studying to become a ninja. This has been one of the biggest debates ever between anybody I'll talk to about zombies, what is the best zombie weapon? See, chainsaw. And somebody already says no. See, here's the thing. Everything that we've talked about, that's why I said we're going over a general idea here. Everybody has a completely different idea of what a zombie is. If you're discussing something like Walking Dead zombie where you can just kill them and you can get all the blood on you want, no big deal. You can use something that's quiet or, and kill them. If you're looking at like the Romero type zombies, you get your chainsaw or Left 4 Dead, you're cutting everything down and, just whatever. That's fine. But if you're dealing with kind of a more realistic biological agent, you don't want to be up and close and personal. Because just like that guy, you get a drop of blood in your eye or in your nose or in your mouth, guess what? You're next. Your best friend will shoot you, right? The bottom two are actual real weapons. I went and found these online. These are highly, highly super tricked out in terms of ammunition and all this stuff. I always get a lot of people that say, I want a fully automatic machine gun, and I'm just going to go to town. Let me explain a little bit about why in the military we have fully automatic weapons. It's for suppression fire. It's not to just start shooting everybody. You can't even aim with that thing. It's all about suppression fire. And guess what? You burn lots and lots of ammo. So unless in your go bag you've got about 50 pounds of ammo plus all your food, okay, then maybe. But you hit the trigger, there goes a clip. There goes 20 rounds. There goes another 20. So really, when everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to go get I want a semi-automatic weapon, it's really a terrible, terrible choice. Even a chainsaw, because I heard somebody say it's loud. Okay, you really want something quiet. Now, if we're dealing with more of a realistic zombie, I advise not to kill anybody because they're still humans. All right. If they're zombies, if we're dealing with the Hollywood, okay, then yeah. For some reason, we all love to think, I want a zombie apocalypse to happen because I just want to go nuts. That's what video games are for, okay? If you were in terms of dealing with a more realistic zombie apocalypse, you would want something that is maybe if you were dealing with some rifle, single shot and quiet. One of the best things I saw on TV was just a basic .22 rifle. You just have to be a really good shot with it. Okay, you don't want something that's crazy like this. As cool as they look, I mean that looks cool. The other thing is, if this thing jams or breaks, how many people actually know how to operate? Almost nobody. Okay, you do, yes. Okay. Most people, and another one, most people don't really know how these weapons operate, so it's not really feasible for us. Again, I don't advise going and just lopping off zombies. Stealth is way better than anything. If you can avoid them at all times, that's the best way to go. Okay, so just a couple of different things that I threw up here in terms of the Hollywood zombie versus kind of a more realistic zombie. Hollywood zombies, I've seen all of these. Something that you can shoot from a distance, something that's up close. It's always the headshot, right? That's always how you kill a zombie. If you shoot them in the chest, what do? They just keep coming, right? It doesn't really affect them. You cut their leg off, they're still coming, okay? So it's always a headshot. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more quiet, axes, crowbars, swords, spears, baseball, I've seen just tons of it. Again, if you've watched just a few zombie films, you can literally use anything. I can use this microphone and just shove it in their head, and they're dead. All right, I win. A more real-life zombie, again, close range, nothing that's a blood spatter. You're more likely to get infected. And again, this is kind of a la 28 Days Later, where if you do get any blood on you, that's bad news, especially in your eye. So random, but there you go. And of course, really with both of these, anything that's silent. You want to be very, very quiet. Again, the number one defense is silence. Overall, like I said, the best defense against all of this is actually just understanding and knowing how to prepare for something like this. Because if you're prepared, you don't have to risk your life to go outside and go find food or to go find water. You've already got it. You can hang in. Let everybody else do all that crazy running around. I'm staying in my house. And hopefully I can get a generator so I can play some Xbox or something. All right? I can play Left 4 Dead while they're all running around outside. Okay. There's a handout that I wrote up for you guys. It's how to be more prepared in 5 minutes. This is not the end all. This is something that you can do in your home in 5 minutes to just grab things that could be potentially valuable. Okay. On this list, the first thing, okay, print out local maps. We've already talked about that because if you don't know how to get from here to Huntsville without 45 and you needed to get away, you're in some serious trouble. Good luck. Okay? So I always say just go right now to print out maps because when everything breaks loose, the infrastructure will also break down. You may not be able to get on your cell phone. You may not be able to get on your computer because everybody's going to be trying to get on and maybe it doesn't even work anymore. I know that during the hurricane you couldn't call out. The only thing you could hope to get through was a text message. Phones don't work anymore. Toss them out the window. Throw them at a zombie while you're running away. That's the best you're going to get out of them at that point. If you're really kind of into, okay, I really want to survive, the second one's print out. You can search this just on Google. It's just one of the U.S. Army survival manuals. So if you don't know how to make a fire, if you don't have that resource, which if you're in an urban area, a lot of these resources are going to be fairly easy to obtain if you just know where to look for them. I'm not running to Walmart if I need something. I'm probably going to run to the feed store or someplace that nobody's really thinking of going to get any of my resources. Don't go to Walmart. It's the worst place you could go. Everybody's there. Pen, paper, can opener, because, man, it really sucks to try to open a can without a can opener. Super glue. Super glue, you can get yourself in trouble with that, but it's really good for suturing wounds. You can put it in a cut and then close it up. Just be sure to move your finger. Otherwise, you're going to walk around like this all day with your fingers glued together. Flashlight batteries, canned goods, balls of water, minimum of 2, but I advise much more. Dryer lint makes excellent tinder. If you need to start a fire, dryer lint catches up so quickly. Another piece of advice, go clean your dryers out or you'll burn your house down. I'm not kidding. People's houses have burned down because of that. So dryer lint's really good. You can a spark and it catches up. Matches lighter, extra car charger for your phone, just in case. Here's what I advise. If you have like an iPad or something like that, download maps that you don't have to get online to obtain. Because you can at least use that. Everybody's got enough car chargers or a solar panel that you can at least use that for, I mean, you can think about it. Your cell phone is, right now, when you have internet connection, it's every bit of the known knowledge in the world on your phone. Think about how crazy that is. If you want to look up something, I can look it up. If I want to learn how to make this, I can do it. When the internet goes down, you don't have access to that. You can actually download Wikipedia to an offline file so that you don't have to access it online. So there's some things that you can keep on your phone to help you out. Where am I at? Oh, small candles, Ziploc bags, rope, twine string, something. Old CDs are great for signal mirrors. If you need to signal instead of, hey, I'm over here. Oh, here comes the zombies. I can signal somebody. Okay. Change of clothes. Like I said, I'm a sucker for socks, so I'm definitely having socks. If you have a pet, dog food, feminine products, I think that's self-explanatory. However, there's something interesting about this as well. Whenever there's been issues where you're dealing with no resources, something like feminine products is a very good barter item. So is alcohol. So if you don't have it, you can barter with those. Those are very, very good barter items. Diapers and wipes, of course, if you got little ones running around. Band-Aids, at least some type of ibuprofen or Tylenol. I use ibuprofen because it also brings down swelling. And if you're on medication, at least 3 days if you're traveling somewhere. Probably more if you can carry it. And then, of course, the last but definitely not the least, duct tape, duct tape, duct tape. You can make anything out of duct tape. Just watch Mythbusters. They made a boat out of duct tape. So if I need to get across a pond, I'm making a boat with duct tape and I'm getting across there. Or make it, sleep it. We'll talk about if zombies can get underwater or not. We were discussing that a minute ago. Okay. So that's just something that you guys can, again, you can grab these things in your house. You don't have to buy these things. These are a lot of things that you already have that you can use that are actually very beneficial if you needed to run out and, say, a bug-out situation. They're very lightweight, so they're not pulling you down, so no zombies hopefully will come after you for that. I just thought this was funny, so I had to throw it in at the end. It made me smile when I saw it. So I was like, that's pretty good. And then the longer you stare, the more they appear. Today I launched my Not Dead Undead Hypothesis Tumblr accounts, my blog that I've started. I've written a book about this. I'm working on submitting that for publication. So if you're interested, you can go to this address, and I'll be starting to post more and more information on the topic. Obviously, I couldn't talk about everything that I wanted to today. We'd be here for like 3 hours, maybe even 4, just talking about the ins and outs of it. I appreciate you guys coming out today. I'll take any questions, or I'm open for any type of discussion. Thanks. Questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, so I take it you've seen The Walking Dead.
Yes.
So, if you cut somebody's leg off after they get bit, can they still get infected?
Well, the idea behind that, the concept, is that it's a virus, right? And I'm still trying to work around in my brain on this one, that if you're scratched or something along those lines, the virus will infect you. It takes a little bit of time, and then you'll die and you'll come back as a zombie, right? That's the premise behind the film. The concept behind them hacking off, sorry if you haven't seen that episode, if they hacked off his, spoiler alert, sorry. Right. Shh, shush. Man, you're just giving them all away. The idea is that anytime, just like say you get bitten by rabies, it takes a while for that virus actually to make it to your body, to travel. So the concept was, as soon as you can, if they get bit, if you can remove that limb, you're actually preventing any of that infection to move up. Had they waited a little bit longer, they might have had to take the whole leg. Once you get past that, you can't remove the limb. So that's the idea behind it. Hopefully they stick to that canon, that they stick to that concept. But, yeah, so. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Would a tourniquet work in that same?
I don't think so. From what I can tell based on that, and again, I've not read the graphic novel. I've only been watching the series. What it appears is even with the tourniquet, you do still get blood flow. So it would still probably move up. And even without, say, blood flow, you still have tissue-to-tissue contact. So you can still have pathogens moving up through those cells. So yeah, so it might slow it a little bit, but it would probably continue. And again, I'm making these references based on my knowledge of biology. Okay, so again, these are kind of inferences. Yes, sir. Well, it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to me, I'm of the thought of a not dead undead, where it's more of a person that's still alive. And my concept is that they don't distinguish between another zombie or a human. They'll just attack anything. Because whenever you get to this stage, and kind of my concept of what a real zombie is, you're at the later stage of infection where you do hallucinate, you're very scared, you're kind of schizophrenic in part. There's a lot of anger, and you're kind of in that fight or flight mode constantly. So you're either going to run away or you're just going to attack whatever it is that's around you. So in my concept, they would attack other zombies, which might kind of help the problem. If you just put all the zombies together, they'll just Thunderdome it and fight one another and be done with it. But they would essentially attack anything. Again, it depends on who you talk to. If you're dealing with Romero zombies or the Crazies or something like that, it just kind of depends. So that's kind of a big question to answer for that one.
Are you going to make this slideshow available at all?
I don't have it available, but what I am going to do is probably post this video, because this was recorded, on the blog, so you'll have access to it there.
Oh, okay. That's the undead.
Yeah. The not dead undead hypothesis? Yeah. And I can write that down for you. I didn't have a chance to put it on the flyer or anything like that, but yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
When you're talking about the crazies, let's say that if it's more along the lines of a rabies type infection, these are more hostile, lethal, and much more, they're much more agile and move quicker. How would you suggest creating a fortified location to protect you from this more lethal threat?
That's really difficult to do, because if you're dealing with something like the Crazies zombies, and which is kind of like the same zombie that I think of the not dead undead, because that's more of a realistic. When you're dealing with something like that, I mean, that's very difficult for any person to fortify yourself against. I mean, you have to think. Just imagine for a second what the police have to do when you're dealing with someone, say, on PCP. I mean, if you watch some of these videos, one person can throw around 3 police officers like they were nothing. And it's just unfathomable. So for something like that, really, I think the best thing to do is not confront them at all. If you can just make wherever you're at, if you can just block yourself in and make it look like nobody's there, that's probably going to be your best defense. If they get through that, shoot them. Everybody's going to be different. Some of us live at home. Some of us live in apartments. Some of us live way out in the middle of nowhere. Some of us are in the city. It really is going to depend on your situation. That's why I never really went into something specific, because it's going to depend on kind of where you're at. Somebody else? Yes, sir.
The whole bath salt concept.
Yeah.
Is that a viable zombie outbreak?
No. Solution or cause? Cause. No, I mean, anytime you're dealing with any type of illicit drug, something along those lines, it tends to be very short-lived. You would have to constantly take that and be in a constant just state, and the body can't handle something like that. You would more than likely deal with something that is kind of slow-acting, something like a virus that's slow-acting, and it progresses over time.
Somebody hypothetically could turn that into a long-lasting substance.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of along the same lines of something like if you could have some drug, say like heroin, with the effects of like the things that you see and stuff, but without where you're not just sitting on the couch all day, something along those lines. Yeah. Yes. Well, maybe. If you're dealing with kind of our Hollywood normal zombie, then yeah, your best friend, just toss him over there and then you run the other way. It's kind of the old adage: you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun your friend. You know. So yeah, you could potentially do something like that. If you're dealing with something more real world, that's not going to really do much. Because it's more of I'm just wanting to attack somebody kind of deal. So again, depending on if you're dealing with something like Romero type zombie, then yeah, you might be able to pull something like that off and toss this and run that way. But if you're dealing with like 28 Days Later or the Crazies, yeah, it gets a little bit more difficult. Yes, sir.
I didn't really hear you talk about like biological outbreaks.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like Umbrella Corporation
Mm-hmm.
and all that. Like there are zombies, but there's like a virus.
It's a biologically engineered virus. Kind of the scary thing is that there are companies out there that are doing stuff like this, where they're breeding viruses, but the idea is that they're breeding it to understand it to make a vaccine. And let me give you an example. Swine flu is not that bad. It's not nearly as bad as we suspected, because we were able to quarantine and do a very good job at keeping that from spreading. The bird flu is very nasty. The problem with the bird flu is it doesn't pass from person to person. It only passes from birds to humans. If the bird flu goes airborne, like the swine flu, it can go from person to person to person to person, and that's very bad news. Can that happen? Sure. When you get infected bats mixing with infected pigs, you get viruses mixing up, which is where we started getting swine flu. They've created that virus. They've created this virus where it is extremely deadly, and it only took 4 generations to do it, meaning which it went through 4 animals, and there it is. Could it happen in nature? Maybe. But there are companies out there doing these things in order to try to make kind of these vaccines. Now, whether they're making a zombie virus, let's hope not.
Have you seen like an outbreak? For example, like if they were trying to, I don't know if you've seen that old movie where they find the Ebola virus in a monkey.
Yeah, Outbreak. Yeah, Dustin Hoffman. It would more likely come, if there was some type of virus, let's say, that was more like a zombie virus, it would more than likely come from a natural population. It would basically just be a conglomeration of probably like a rabies virus mixed with something else. So you would see it more natural rather than a company breaking down and it getting out that way. Yeah. Yes, sir.
During the zombie apocalypse, there's obviously going to be pandemonium, people running rampant in the streets. Would you also suggest for the rest of us, rather than teaching ourselves how to fight the undead, however they may be, to also fight against certain people that could possibly be a detriment to your unit?
Yeah, if you're in the situation where you're basically not prepared, that you have to leave for resources, or you're kind of in this bug-out situation, yeah, like I said, I highly advise you don't just go around just trying to shoot people. That's the worst way to go. I mean, you're going to be taken out extremely fast. Self-defense is just something I say everybody should learn anyway, for so many different reasons. And I can speak to that because I've taken martial arts for probably about 2.5 years. I'm not currently taking it. But it's really good for any type of situation that I highly advise that you learn non-lethal tactics to get away from people. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's good for so many different reasons. Someone's had a question? Yes, sir.
Have you read World War Z?
I've not. And I've done that for a reason. I did not want to have my book influenced by World War Z so that I wasn't accused of any plagiarism or anything like that. And I didn't want my ideas rooted in another text. I wanted to kind of look at it from my viewpoint as a biologist.
So you have a book out on this?
Not yet. I've written a book. I've got it submitted to some publishers, and I'm waiting on it currently.
Okay. Then my other question is, do you have some kind of list of like the best zombie movies to watch in order to kind of get an idea of how to?
I would say, for me, if you're going to look at it from a more of a real life scenario, The Crazies, Contagion, and maybe 28 Days Later. 28 Days Later is a little far-fetched, in terms of all this rage virus. But Contagion is a great one for any type of biological contaminant, especially when that's airborne, because it shows how quickly it can move through the environment. You could be infected, not know it, and then I could infect I could be infected right now. Now we're all infected, because it's not just airborne. There's something that they barely talk about it in Contagion called somites, and it's basically pieces of ourselves that we leave behind on surfaces. So when you touch it, now you have it. And if you rub your eye, a lot of people don't know this, you can get the flu virus through your eye. So if you touch something and you rub your eye, you can get the flu that way. It's not just, I got to look at my hand or stick my finger in my nose. You can get it through your eye as well. Yes, sir.
Has the government ever engineered a virus and infected another population with that virus?
Not to public knowledge. It has happened. For example, there were experiments, say, during World War II, in Nazi Germany, that have come out of human experimentation.
Did they infect people with syphilis?
Yes, that was one of them. There was also one in South America where the government did a syphilis trial to people that they didn't know. So as far as we know, the answer is no. But it's not to say that if you look back at early medical history that hasn't happened before around the world. Someone else have a question over here? Yes, sir.
In terms of the Walking Dead zombies,
Mhm.
the characters find out. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
The characters find out that they were already infected.
Mhm.
The infection was born inside them.
Right.
They get bitten, die, where the virus or whatever they have
Mhm.
activates and turns them into zombies.
Right.
Now, and if that's the case in real life, what weapon would be best, or could be best used to fight against zombies if you're up face to face with them?
Well, just one thing to kind of talk about with that zombie. That for me, that's a little bit of a stretch. That once the body dies, to reanimate every single cell, because this virus would have to be so diverse because you would have to reanimate so many different types of muscle cells, so many different skin cells for this even to barely operate. I mean, our bodies are extremely complex, so the virus would have to be extremely complex, and viruses are just not all that complex on their own. Really, I think the tactics that they're using in Walking Dead for that is probably the best ones, just something up close, because if you've already got it, who cares? As long as you're quiet, crowbar up close, pipe, just whatever, as long as it's stealthy is kind of the situation. So I was very pleased that in the first season, they moved from guns that are very, very loud to something that's a little bit more up close and personal and silent. The problem, of course, is when you're not one-on-one, when there's hundreds of them, you've got no options at that point. So, yeah, I would say what they're doing is probably the best way to go. My opinion, though. My opinion.
Is what they're doing in The Walking Dead a realistic assumption of how it would be if an outbreak occurred? Like the group, there's not thousands of zombies chasing you. It's a herd or a pack.
Right.
Is that a realistic concept?
I think so. And the reason that I say this, if we're dealing with something like the Not Dead, Undead, and you look at the deterioration of the brain, we start functioning on a very basic level. And the reason that I say that that probably happens is one of my family members it has been diagnosed and has had Alzheimer's disease for quite some time. And what we've noticed is when you look at a lot of these patients, they actually group together and follow one another. So whenever you look at a lot of cases of dementia, that tends to be what happens. And that's because as the brain starts to shut down and not operate, we really do kind of go back to a lot of our base functions. So yeah, I would definitely expect something like that to occur. But again, it depends on the stage. If it's further stage, then yes. But if it's an earlier stage where you're full of anger, you might actually attack that other individual. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Hey guys, real quick, we're going to show you all a promotional video of our event coming next week called The Last Fall Fest on Earth for Fall Fest.
On Wednesday.
So,